Welcome to Season 2, Episode 26 of Logicast, the AWS News podcast brought to you by Logicata. I'm Karl Robinson, CEO and co-founder of Logicata, and I'm joined, as I am every week, by my colleague, John Goodall. How are you this week, John?
That caught me off guard. You changed it.
I did. I had to think of something different to say because I've been saying the same thing every week for however long now. So, yeah, I just switched it up a little bit there.
Oh, yeah, no, that caught me off guard. No, I'm good. Friday was good. Passed the DevOps Pro exam on Friday.
Woo! Yeah,
but I didn't find out until Saturday because yet again I got audited. I seem to get audited all the time on these.
Well, it's only one night of panicking as to whether you've actually made it or not, whether all that study paid off. But yeah, well done on your first pro specialty level cert. Onward and upward. Here's to many more.
Is there an up? I don't think there's an up. There's just
onwards and sideways. Onwards and sideways. Onwards and more sideways. Yeah. So anyway, we're also joined today by a very special guest, Maria Christidi Noble, who is also an AWS community builder. So great to have you on board, Maria. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do for a living.
Hi, Karl. Hi, John. Nice to finally meet you. Thank you so much for having me over this episode. I'm Maria. I've recently been accepted as an AWS community builder, and I'm so grateful to be part of this community. I've met amazing people throughout the almost, I think, 5-6 months I've been part of the program since February. Yeah. So it's just a great place for people of all levels that love cloud computing, and AWS specifically. That's my only true love when it comes to cloud computing so far. I haven't explored other clouds yet, so I have to say I'm happy where I am. I come from a untraditional background related to technology. That is, I have well over a decade of experience in business operations, business development, leadership in different industries, including fitness, hospitality, finance, education, and now, recently, I'm part of a cloud education team. The company is called Digital Cloud Training and specializes in AWS training for certification, hands-on experience, and so on. So within the company, I help a lot with customer success, and I find that very rewarding throughout my career. I try to have that, constant connection with people and be able to help the best way I can so their experience is, what they want it to be.
Cool. So is it fair to say you're relatively new to the cloud world then, as well as to the community builder program?
Yeah, that's very true. Close to a year, soon to be. I'm working on, my goal is to take 2 more AWS certifications by the end of the year. So working on that, working hands-on, love building on AWS, and I truly think being part of the community and the enthusiasm and the passion, keeps your inner flame going. So I've always loved working for being aligned with my work and my goals. So I feel like I'm at the right place. I come from a humanities background, so technology has always been a little bit intimidating. Aside from the fact I loved playing, computer games in my younger years, like League of Legends and StarCraft and so on. So I've always loved technology in general, so I incorporate it in business operations and always thought it's a great means to succeed in business, So very open-minded, and then cloud computing started growing and growing, and I felt, hey, it's really a democratizing technologies because anybody can learn the cloud and apply it in their business goals, as long as you have that seed of interest to learn and troubleshoot, I think you can make it.
Absolutely. Well, I think we're going to talk about that in one of the articles that we've selected for this week as well. But I guess you are living proof that it is possible to make that transition. So well done.
Thank you.
Anyway, speaking of the articles, as you'll know, if you listen to the podcast on a regular basis, every week I collate a list of AWS news, which I share via my weekly AWS News Roundup newsletter. And then John and I select a subset of those articles that we'd like to talk about on the podcast with our guest. So we've got a list of such articles this week. And the first one, in fact, the first two are from our friends at InfoQ. We do like their articles. This one is by AWS hero Renato Losio. We didn't make him a hero. He's been a hero for a long time and he hasn't been on the podcast. But yeah, we've made a few heroes on the podcast. And let's hope we're going to make some more. But no, Renato has been a hero for a while and writes regularly for InfoQ. And he's written this article about this recently launched feature, Live Tail in CloudWatch logs for real-time exploration of logs. So that's a nice title because it does kind of explain what the service does. But tell us a little bit more about the Live Tail for CloudWatch logs, John, and why you might want to do real-time exploration of logs.
Right. So in traditional fashion, let's do a couple of definitions in case people aren't familiar with some terms. So live tailing is an internet term functionally for a persistent tail of a log. And a tail of a log file it's a Linux thing, tail minus F, and it will just kind of trawl through the log file, and it just, as new records are written to the log, it will just show them on the screen. Really helpful if you're trying to debug something, if you're trying to look at something. I've been live tailing Nginx logs since I could type, because it's a thing that you end up needing to do. Cool. Other log analytics tools, Datadog being one of them, has had live tailing for a long time, where you just say, show me the live tail, and it will just, on the screen, as it gets logs, it will just show them to you. This is kind of cool. This is really handy, again, if you're working in serverless or in containers, where you don't necessarily have a log file, per se, and you're trying to debug what's going on, something might be broken, so on and so on. Cool. You couldn't do that in CloudWatch logs until now. Why is this helpful? Well, a couple of services log by default to CloudWatch, Lambda being one of them. So you don't really, it's really handy because you don't have to worry about writing log drivers and making sure you're exporting your logs out somewhere. You just print to the console and it shows up in CloudWatch. It's great. It's really handy. But if you're doing online dev and you're not using the AWS toolkit, or you're just kind of trying to debug something because you didn't make it, then you are forever hitting refresh and reloading log groups and log streams, and it's just really painful because it's eventually consistent. CloudWatch, it gets there pretty quickly, but you can run the Lambda and then you've got to wait and then wait a bit more and then reload and then it's there. So this is kind of taking that pain and making it go away. It's really quite cool because I've used it because I'm doing lots of Lambda work, and you just set the live tail on the group rather than the stream, because you get a new log stream every time you re-invoke a Lambda when it's redeployed. So because it's cached for a little while, it kind of will reuse a stream for a bit, but not forever. So you put a tail on the log group rather than the stream, and you just leave a screen running, and as you're working, it just does it. Great. The pricing is pretty cool. You get 1,800 minutes per month for free, perpetual, which is pretty good. What's 1,800 minutes? That's
30.
What's that in hours? That's
30 hours. It's 30 hours. So we could say like maybe an hour a day is free in that sense, maybe.
it's pretty generous. And then it's $1 a minute after that. No, sorry, it's a penny a minute. It's a penny a minute after that. So it's aggressively priced. And quoting Corey Quinn at the end there, it's how he uses CloudWatch logs 95% of the time. Yeah, me too, honestly. Just sit there hitting the refresh button, getting logs. So I like this. I like this a lot because of that, and the fact that you can have more than one group in a live tail session. So if you're trying to end-to-end debug something, going from API gateway through a load balancer to a Lambda, you could have 3-4 log groups that you need to kind of pay attention to, and they're all just there. So that makes your life a lot easier when you're kind of stringing lots of services together. So yeah, like that. Have used that. Will continue to use that.
Nice.
To head off your questions.
Yeah, you've answered all the questions before I've had a chance to ask them. So yeah, we know each other too well. So any thoughts on this one yourself, Maria?
I think it's great. I think CloudWatch I've used it while learning and building and different labs. So it's a resource we always have to use anyway. And I think that makes it a lot easier. Like John said, I also love the element of the filter patterns. I think that's great too. We can specify with keywords, show me all the errors or however you want to do it. And I also paid attention in the documentation as well that it is case sensitive as well. So that's also something to pay attention to, typing keywords and so on. So I feel color coding is also great as part of specifying the terms that you want, and just helps out. I think the overview as you work. I'm sure you can guys document that more than me. I'm more of a student practicing, but on your daily work, I think, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, getting this into the in the console, it's handy because it's there. Because if you're trying to debug something that, you know, like I say, you didn't write, you're not developing custom application. Because as consultants, we do that quite a bit. That's cool. What's really handy is with the CLI, with the API, you just have the live tail just spinning in a terminal, and then you start running your tests in other terminals in your IDE, whatever, and you never have to log in. Because the console can be a bit painful at times, and if you don't have to use it to achieve something else, great, love it.
Yeah,
awesome. Well, I'm a bit more in your camp, Maria, because I don't use these things either. Just a little secret there for the listeners.
World's worst kept secret.
I tend to only use them when I'm doing labs and courses and everything else. So yeah,
it's quite funny because every time that comes up, you get, "Oh, I'm in sales," and yet you've done SA Pro. You can't have the "I'm in sales" card when you've done that test. I'm revoking the sales card.
Yeah, okay. Let's call it executive function then. I'm in the executive function, so I'm very rarely getting my hands. I was going to say hands dirty. I do get my hands dirty, but not with computers. So yeah, usually cars and motorbikes and things like that. But it's got nothing to do with CloudWatch logs. So anyway, moving swiftly on.
You could stream some data out of like an OBD module from your bike if you felt really nerdy.
Could I use CloudWatch logs livetail to analyze that? I probably could actually if I was.
Maybe not while riding.
Yeah. No, definitely not. No. I did have a bike that did a whole load of data logging actually to a mobile phone app, which was pretty cool. It told you your max lean angle and things like that. So you could go out and go around roundabouts and try and lean it over more and then get the app out and think, oh, that was disappointing, or wow, that was great. Yeah. But we really are getting off topic now, I think. So anyway, let's move swiftly on to our second article from InfoQ this week, which is about I'm not sure if we spoke about this on the podcast before, but I know we've been speaking a lot about it internally at Logicast. It's something that was launched recently called EC2 Instance Connect Endpoint. To enable secure connectivity between public and private networks. So it's really a new secure way to connect to your EC2 instances without using SSH, as I understand it. John, perhaps you can shed a bit more light on this for us.
Yeah, so this is a bit of a fuzzy one because EC2 Instance Connect has been a thing for a little while, but it needed a public IP address. So you could connect to it without having to worry about SSH keys and usernames and all that jazz. You just kind of went connect and you got a session in the browser. Great, love that. What this is doing is it's taking that, but kind of improving it. You no longer need a public IP address, so you can connect to your private non-web facing EC2 instances directly. You don't have to run a Bastion host to do it because Bastions are bane of my existence. They really are. Some people refer to them as jump boxes, jump hosts. I think that's an Australian term, but it makes a lot more sense when you use that because you get on that server and then you can jump to the next one, or you can use them to tunnel SSH connections through so that you can access privately hosted RDS instances or kind of any other resource. Right. What this is doing is it's taking that Bastion requirement and just getting rid of it because it's Bastion as a service functionally. What it does is it's functionally, like I say, it's Bastion as a service. It's a TCP proxy and it supports SSH and RDP. So you can use it to connect to your Windows instances as well as to your Linux instances. And because it also supports SSH, you can use it to connect to your RDS instances by using a tunnel, right? Because when you're using a Bastion as a tunnel, you connect to the Bastion by SSH and then you have forwarded a port from your machine onto the Bastion so that port 3389 for MySQL just goes straight through and it's connected via SSH. So this is taking that and meaning that you don't have to maintain and configure a server, keep that up to date, patched, hardened, all that jazz. It's there. And even better, it's free. We like a bit of free. So that's really cool. That is really, really cool. A couple of other things that it does do as well is because it's basically running as a bastion. You open a tunnel and then you can do SCP, so you can move files up and down, again, without having to hop them over bastions and that kind of thing. And there's a nice convenience function as well. If you're trying to connect to a Linux machine, you just run the command EC2 Instance Connect SSH instance name, and it will drop you straight onto the box. And it's using your IAM permissions to work out whether or not you should have access to these servers rather than a host key. Yes, for a Windows machine, you do still have to provide a username and a password, but that's just doing the tunneling as opposed to dropping you straight onto the machine. But this is really cool. Really, really like this.
How about yourself, Maria? I'm sure you'll have come across Bastion hosts in your training journey. Perhaps you won't have come across this because it's so new, but any thoughts on this one from you?
I think it's great that they're trying to simplify things even more, make them even more, less dependencies and it's less mistakes, thus, less chance to error. The thoughts I had around this was if you guys know maybe if it's already supported by CloudFormation, or what are your thoughts? Will it ever be supported by CloudFormation?
So it sits in the endpoints in the VPC. I've not checked CloudFormation, but I think it's available because in the same way that like an S3 endpoint for VPC, you just sort of sit it in the endpoint list. It works like that. I've not checked CloudFormation, but I would imagine it is available. Given that it's available via the CLI, it will be available via Terraform already, if not very, very soon, because that talks to the API and Terraform gets there really quickly. So yeah, this is cool. And as I say, I think it's in CloudFormation. So it's something that, I mean, we as a business should be doing, and people generally, I would recommend start putting this in your VPC templates because it's there, it's free. Even if you're not really going to use it, just do it because it's great.
Potentially a small cost-saving element to it as well, because if you are doing away with the Bastion host, no cost to run it. So.
I mean, maybe, but they tend to run like T2 micros and T3 nanos and things. So it's
trivial, but trivial. As they say, look after the pennies, and the pounds or the dollars will look after themselves. So on that note, let's move on to our next article.
Showing your age again.
Was it now? What do we say now then? Look after the pounds, and the hundreds will look after themselves, or something.
No, we just say cost of living.
Yeah, the cost of living crisis.
Cause he lives.
Anyway, moving on from the cost of living, let's talk about something that everybody wants to talk about at the moment when we talk about cloud. This article is all about AWS embracing the power of generative AI. So you can't really look at the cloud press at the moment or the IT press without coming across articles about generative AI. John and I recently attended the London summit where it took them about 3 minutes into the keynote to mention generative AI. I was on a call with an AWS account manager, a three-way call with a client the other day, and at the end of the call, the account manager asked if they were interested in generative AI. So AWS are obviously really pushing the whole generative AI piece, partly because the technology is just gathering a pace in the industry as a whole. And some people say AWS are playing catch up. Others say they're just playing the long game, the smart game. But I think this article is really has been published because there's a big conference happening in the US this week, I think later this week, all about generative AI. But of course, it does talk about AWS's Bedrock proposition, which they talked a lot about at the recent summit. But Maria, I know you were keen to talk about this one. So tell us your thoughts about generative AI and how you think, is it impacting your life yet, or your working life?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it impacts, I don't know if it's most people's, but at least people, I guess, within the realm of technology have definitely heard about it. Definitely, maybe some have been impacted with their jobs also, but also how to utilize it for becoming more productive within your tasks as well. I think it's a matter of getting familiarized, being a little open-minded. So in a way, I do agree to an extent with Matt Wood's comment here, relating to trying to be to be open-minded and understand that it's probably not going to go anywhere the same way cloud computing isn't going anywhere. So in a way, once we understand it and educate ourselves around it and learn how to utilize it for the best of our advantage, I think we have a better chance to also contribute in which direction it's going, instead of just, receiving passively information, whether be it positive or negative. I'm sure you've heard already in EU, they have almost passed the AI Act, which is globally the first one that's going to really affect the way AI is operating in European Union. Of course, it hasn't been voted yet, but last week there was an open letter from more than 150 big tech figures in the European Union, directed to the Commission and the Parliament, saying, well, we need to look at this a little more. We feel it's very restrictive, and you're going to put EU far behind the game, kind of staying on the sidelines where the rest of the world is going faster. So they're asking for more research on where to regulate and how much, so the businesses can still innovate and contribute. Because there are areas that, for example, medical sector has been very positively influenced by AI and early detection and connecting all the dots through a patient's history and so on. So yeah, I think it's I think everybody's still a little bit torn. There are ethical and privacy concerns that I don't think have been addressed yet to an extent that people can feel safe with their information out there. But I think the way to go is to learn more about it, understand it,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of my big concerns is I can't remember which one of my children it was, but they've been using it to do their homework. And so the kids all know about generative AI. And I don't know how many of how much of students' coursework is now being done by generative AI.
That's dangerous, because there's websites out there that will tell you if it's AI generated.
Yeah, I guess like the plagiarism checker things.
Right.
Yeah, so that's really dangerous.
I suppose it depends how good the eye of the AI is, though, doesn't it? Because I mean, to be fair, a lot of what people do when they are writing articles is they research stuff and they regurgitate it in their own words, which is kind of what some aspects of generative AI is doing.
But we touched on this a lot because was it Jeff? It was Werner? Was it Werner Vogels that kind of said ages ago now that there was this thing that ChatGPT said that was just patently false, like it was wrong, and he was up in arms about it, and it was not biased for the truth and all this sort of thing. So yeah, it's not so much just doing the research and regurgitating it in your own tone of voice, but you do need to understand it in case if you get questioned on it and all the rest of it. But yeah, using it for your homework it's naughty.
It is definitely, because you also never know necessarily if the information you're getting is correct. Those models have those like hallucinations moments that they just pop up an answer and it's like, that's definitely not what I asked, and definitely not what I was hoping to get, and definitely not true. So I feel even it shouldn't be seen as a way to cheat or like, it'll write the code for me and then I'll just copy paste it, because that's not professionalism. You should be able to like know enough to be able to double check the solution. It will save you time, obviously, but as long as you double check and make sure everything is correct, then go ahead and be confident that this is correct. There's still, I feel it's like baby steps still. I think we experience this real big, exponential growth that will be so fast, and like from month to month we see big changes.
I did have ChatGPT write the marketing description for our Brighton AWS user group meeting that we did recently, and it did a much better job than I could have done myself, I think. But yeah, proceed with caution, I think, is
right.
the message, isn't it? Really, like with many of these new technologies. But yeah, the possibilities are endless, really. And we saw some great examples of that at the recent London Summit, and I'm sure we're going to see many, many more great examples and use cases for the technology. Anyway, I'm conscious of time, so let's skip on. We've got this article here from CRN about 5 top AWS executives who resigned, departed in 2023. So I'm not quite sure what to infer from the punctuation in the title. Did they all resign, or did some of them just depart? But we have spoken about this. We've certainly spoken about one of these people. So the first one in the article is Chris van der Haar, which is who's the head of data centers at AWS. But what do we think is going on here, guys? Where are all these big why and where are all these big senior executives going from AWS?
Well, Chris van der Haar, no comment. The next chap, Puneet Chandok, again, it doesn't say. A couple of them have sort of left from like VP sort of level, relatively senior, and to go and do their own thing because they've kind of seen, oh, I can make a load of money doing this, and they go and do their own thing, and they get bought up by somebody else, and then they make a few million quid, which is, it's a thing, it's a thing. I can't say I wouldn't do it if I had the opportunity.
And I noticed that the third one in the article, Arian, I'm going to mispronounce his name, I'm sure, and I hate doing that, but I've never heard it spoken. So Arian Mihis, I guess.
I'd say Mehis, but
Arian Mihis, something along those lines. He's actually left to go to a large partner. So, still in the ecosystem, still technically working for AWS, although on the partner side of the fence rather than directly for the organization. So, that's seems like an interesting move. Certainly good acquisition for that partner.
We've seen that at lower levels as well, though, with engineers that we've worked with, where AWS sort of ProServe and the solutions architect team and what have you have a bit of a revolving door between partners of a certain level and AWS. So we've seen people kind of go in and out and in and out and hang around for a few years, or maybe they'll leave the partner space and stay in AWS for a while. It doesn't feel uncommon. I don't know if the same is true of like Google and Microsoft, but it probably is. So
is it just sensationalist press, you think, picking on these things? Or what do you think, Maria? Do you think there's something going on? Is there a sinister undercurrent, or is this just the press trying to make something out of nothing to... I was going to say sell newspapers, but then I'm showing my age again there, aren't I, John? So because none of these, I haven't got my fingers dirty on a newspaper for a while. So
right. Yeah. Well, I think it's a mix of both. I think the news are probably trying to make an assumption that these are related maybe with the recent layoffs that have happened with, AWS. Maybe they feel that's related to that. I think for the most part, these are cases of their own. Like John mentioned earlier, Chris van der Haar, I don't know, you chose to not comment on that.
No, AWS had no comment on that one.
Yes. Oh, okay. Yes, AWS, that is true. However, I don't know. We can assume that back in 2021, he was interested in the actual CEO position. He was one of the runner-ups, and then that never happened. So maybe he decided to take a different route. Maybe that was part of his decision. And maybe that is also why AWS doesn't feel like commenting either. It's personal decision a lot of times for that high level of C-level executives. They're their own products themselves. They decide what's next for them, what keeps their career going, and what poses challenges. Because I think a lot of those roles are related to solving problems, to making companies advance. So if you feel that you've covered this in a company, then you want to contribute somewhere else. So it could also be that as well. In a lot of these cases, like I think one of the names was Tom Lash, who was the GM in the national security category, but then he's now the CEO of Meadow Technical, I think was the company's name. So definitely going up and contributing to their career.
Achieving the status somewhere else, I guess.
Right.
If you can't go any further up the ladder in one organization, then go and climb the ladder in another one, I guess.
Yeah, I feel that's possible for many people. Then the Todd Weatherby, I think his name, Weatherby. Yeah, that was a big conversation back in the day. I think it was definitely the fact he was put in an advisory position for a year from AWS, taken away from the active duty, probably contributed to his decision as well. So I wouldn't put those together in signifying one direction for AWS. I think they're just decisions in the corporate world. They happen all the time everywhere.
Fair enough. Cool. Okay. Again, conscious of time, but I did want to have a couple of minutes on this last article that we've chosen, which is all about AWS Restart. And we touched on this in your introduction, Maria. Obviously, you're relatively new to the cloud world. This article specifically is about AWS expanding the Restart program to Portugal. But none of us are Portuguese, as far as I'm aware, and none of us live in Portugal. I was more interested in the program as a whole, AWS Restart. So is this something that you were part of, Maria, or is it something that you're involved in your current career?
I am not a part of it, but I have studied about it because through my connection, also we have a lot of community builders that are part of the Restart, and I feel that this is such a great initiative from AWS to incorporate and give those opportunities in countries that probably don't have so much exposure to institutions or places where they can study, apart from the online aspect, of course, because there are many places that you can study online wherever you are in the world. But I think taking into consideration limitations and cost of life and all these things, I think putting this together is great. And it also shows the commitment from AWS on building knowledge around the cloud and giving people a second opportunity to flourish in a career through cloud computing in certain positions, because I also noticed that they do specific training for certain roles. So that's also great as well. I'm guessing these are roles that AWS feels are in great need in general. I noticed one is, I think, similar to a technical account manager. So that's definitely a position that every company, dealing with cloud services and customers should have to address issues coming from the customers. So connecting them also with employers within their region, that's great. Portugal is Southern European country. I come from Greece. I was born and raised in Athens. So I do know for a fact that Southern Europe still struggles with unemployment and still struggles with opportunities to educate younger people also, or people later in their career to get a second chance. Sometimes you feel a little stuck in a path if, especially in Southern Europe. I can't elaborate on that. That's another podcast session. It's a complex issue.
Yeah. But no, it's great that AWS are putting resources behind helping people make those career transitions. Any closing thoughts on this one, John?
Not specifically. I mean, I've poked around with the website a little bit. I'm obviously far too old for that. But there's like a dozen in the UK alone. There's representatives of like 30 EMEA countries in there. It's interesting that Portugal wasn't already in there, but I suppose, as you say, it's a Southern European thing, which I always thought was just lazy tax policy, but there we are. But yeah, no, love this, love the hell out of this. And as the article, an article's a bit generous, says, it's part of AWS's effort to help 29 million people, why not 30,
round it up,
reskill and get into tech and all the rest of it.
Cool. I remember actually the place where you got your other minty coloured T-shirt, the ComSum, we were talking to a young lady there who'd recently reskilled and started in AWS. She's now a solutions architect, community builder, and advocating AWS around schools and things like that. And previously had been an auto mechanic. So, it's great to see people making those changes and bringing the much needed skills into the world of cloud computing, where we have a huge skills shortage. So on that note, I'm going to wrap up. That was season 2, episode 26 of Logicast. Thank you, John, as always, for being here. And thank you, Maria, for being our guest today. It's been great to have your insights on those articles.
Thank you for having me.
And you're very welcome. So don't forget, you can download Logicast wherever you get your podcasts. We're also now live on a YouTube channel. So if you search for Logicast AWS News Podcast, please put my teeth back in. So that would be an entirely different kind of podcast. So it's a Logicast AWS News podcast. And please download and subscribe. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again next time. Thank you.
Thank you.